if you're serious about your product, you want to be here in the long term. And in my opinion, Polkadot is an network that's going to be here in the next 10 to 15 years. I cannot say the same thing about other products out there, other blockchains out there.
Welcome to the Alpha Podcast, brought to you by Neverland Labs and hosted by me, Justin, here in Buenos Aires. We're at the Polkadot Decoded conference in Buenos Aires. This is a special edition. These episodes are unique because I'm co-hosting them with Jay, who has his own podcast, and we're kind of working together where we're co-interviewing people and switching things up. There'll be a version on his channel and there'll be a version on this channel, so make sure to check out both versions, and we already know mine, it's gonna be better. I want to remind you that everything you're about to hear is not financial advice, nor do we endorse any of the projects or guests on the show. It is simply meant for educational purposes, and sometimes we're learning about these people or projects in real time. While this is brought to you by Neverland Labs, the opinions expressed are of mine, the guests, and also Jay's. I want to give a huge shout out to Polka House, who brought us out here to make this happen. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this series, and let's tap into the episode.
I'm BD lead at Parity, right? I got into this space a couple of years ago, let's say 3-4 years ago, more or less. I was always keen into this sort of like industry.
When you say space, are you talking about the Polkadot space or blockchain in general?
Space in general,
awesome.
Right? Polkadot was always there as a very interesting project, in my opinion. But before that, I actually used to work here in Buenos Aires. I'm from Argentina, and I used to work for Procter & Gamble. I actually sold diapers. I know a hell lot about diapers. And now what I do at Parity is, as you said, I'm a BD lead, and I basically work in the part of the business development team that has to do with teams that are committed into building our ecosystem.
Yeah.
So I basically help them become actually parachains on the ecosystem. So I had the chance to work with almost all Polkadot parachains right now, and with a bunch of projects that will become parachains in the future. So that's very cool.
Very cool. And how did this relationship with Parity start? You said you had kind of Polkadot on the radar. How did you officially get a role with the company?
So as I said, right, I was very much into blockchain altogether, right? And when I was at Procter & Gamble, I usually mixed up P&G and Parity a lot because they both start with a P. So just bear with me in a minute if I say something wrong. But basically, I wanted to just jump into a more technological product. I wanted to step out from the diapers business. And ideally on that technological product would be blockchain related, and ideally a very low infrastructure project, right? So Polkadot fit very well into my desire. And I started applying for different jobs. I actually had to get a bit more of knowledge on development in general, right, of applications. So I got a scholarship to study web development in Lisbon. I moved to Lisbon. I studied that, and then I started off as an intern at Parity. So I did 10 years of P&G, got to being a brand manager, and all of a sudden, a new internship at Parity started, and my life started again, and here we are.
When you spend 10 years building a kind of a career in somewhere, what does that transition look like when you have to go from putting in the work, you've done the hard stuff and kind of proven yourself, and now you have to almost start completely over and work yourself up? That I feel like that takes a lot of humility, as well as being willing to kind of take that step back to potentially further your career. How was that for you?
It was exactly like that, right? I've got a lot of support from my wife as well to do the transition. She was like, okay, let's do it. Let's go on this journey together. You need to be humble if you're going to be in the blockchain space, right? Because it's impossible to know absolutely everything. Yeah. And the moment that you think you know everything, you're just going to lose a big picture, right?
Yeah.
So sure. I knew that I needed to learn a lot of things, and internship was the right move for me. Although, of course, I had to humble down and say, okay, this is what I need to do for the next 6-8 months. I need to learn. I need to sit down and get at it. And I did it. It was a good move,
off, right?
Yeah, so far so good, yeah.
You're working in business development there. What are your main objectives day to day for Parity right now?
So basically what I try to do is I try to work with a lot of teams that want to become parachains in our ecosystem, right? Either they want to become parachains, or they want to provide some sort of service to the parachains. So think about wallets, think about indexers, like those sort of projects, right?
Sure.
So we sort of work with them from an MVP stage all the way up to becoming that project that can be used afterwards. And right now, we're working with around 60 different projects in the ecosystem.
Wow.
And scaling that up and this year.
You're from Argentina, right?
Correct.
And then do you currently live in Buenos Aires?
Berlin, actually.
Berlin?
Yeah.
Okay, so you went from Argentina to Lisbon, and then you're in Berlin. Out of the different places, how does Web3 impact kind of the economy or the people there? I mean, even coming here today and seeing in Argentina, that Decoded is hosted in Buenos Aires. Like, how does that feel to you?
I'm extremely pleasantly surprised with the way that the ecosystem is in here, right? But I would divide it a little bit into what I see it's happening at the moment. So I'm seeing a lot of actual builders of applications being outside of Argentina, but a lot of actual users being in Argentina, right?
Interesting.
Oh.
Yeah. So you've got here an economy that has like 70% inflation a year. So people need to escape that. And people use blockchain to escape that. They use DeFi to escape that, right? A lot of people here in Argentina, unfortunately, got very, very much wrecked with Luna, right? So Argentina has a big restriction on the ability that people have to buy dollars. People here can buy only $200 a month. With 60%, 70% inflation in pesos, you need something else to protect your money, right? Or you spend it, or you try to find something up. So when they saw Luna offering 20% yield on stablecoins a year, that was a no-brainer for everybody here, right?
Yeah.
But well, unfortunately, things went south, and it sucks.
Yeah, it's tragic because it's like you're taking an already fairly underserved kind of
Exactly
poor population, and then like they get wrecked. And yeah, it's almost like you just kicking when they're down.
100%, and it makes me very, very sad, to be honest, right?
Yeah.
But it still talks to the fact that people here need these tools, right? And they have to use them on a day-to-day basis to protect themselves in the end.
So I guess the goal, or part of the goal then, is to create, what Luna offered, but something sustainable that people can actually believe in and they can actually rely upon, so they can build their lives upon.
Yeah, exactly.
A currency that's actually working.
It's a bit bigger than just yield on stablecoins, right? It's just pseudo products that people can use without relying on intermediaries at all, right? And in Argentina specifically, there's such levels of corruptions that we are talking about money because it's the easiest thing to explain, but that happens in everything that you do every single day in the end, right? And try to just remove those barriers is what happens. But I still believe that from what I've had this past 2 weeks that I've been in Argentina trying to connect with the people here, it's amazing how people need to use these tools, right? And a bunch of users are staying here.
Well, it's interesting. Like you definitely emphasize the fact that like with a 70% inflation rate, like of course they have to find something better. Like that is not a healthy, sustainable way to live. It doesn't matter who you are. Like that's crazy. But then there's also like you have people who are going to be way more susceptible to seeing like, hey, here's a 20% yield, which is also insane. Like that is not anybody offering you 20% yield on anything is not sustainable.
Correct.
Either. Is there a way that like there's people who are more vulnerable to these things because they are in a bigger need? They're desperate, so they see this like, here's my lottery, here's this golden ticket. What can be done to help educate people to make sure that there is some sort of safeguards? Like there's almost a borderline of like regulation versus education. Like is there a point where you regulate or focus on education and letting people just make the choices?
There's no one actor that has to be responsible for this, in my opinion, right? It's a bunch of people that have to be involved in this. People themselves with this sort of scars they learn as well, right?
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, but that's part of the process, in my opinion, right? This is so new that these things will happen. And it's part of the learning curve. But also developers or builders themselves need to be responsible on what they do, right? They need to be here for the very, very long term. It's not short-term gains. And unfortunately, this space, the blockchain space in general, right, is a lot, especially on bull markets, about very short-term gains, where you get into Twitter and everybody says, buy this and you will become a millionaire.
Right.
When that's not the case.
Right.
Nobody gives you money for free at all, right? So it's just like being responsible from a building perspective, and that is very good. And this sort of like market cycle that we're in right now, in my opinion, has the most responsible builders at all. The ones that just do not care about becoming millionaires, but actually producing products that will impact the life of the people in the long run, right?
Yeah.
And that is very cool.
These bear markets are when like the real things are going to come. We're going to see the real products, the long-lasting projects are coming out of these bear markets for sure.
And these people usually have the right incentives, right? So as part of my job, I do interview a lot of teams or even people that want to build in our ecosystem, right, in the Polkadot ecosystem. And in bull market cycles, people are more cared about like going live or having like a sort of like joint blog post or an announcement or something like that, right?
Yeah.
They want to just sell their tokens. Whereas on a bear market, people that are building on the bear market, they're more concerned about what their product does and how they can manage to deliver that, right?
Right.
So you hear more of those voices than the voices of people trying to get a quick buck. Whereas in the bull market, you just hear both, right?
It was kind of crazy. You said a little bit ago that you're talking to 60 projects coming up on the Kusama network.
It's like 6-0.
6-0, yeah.
6-0.
So what kind of programs are you building to like scale that much communication, that much education? What are you doing to address this need?
Yeah, so it all started when I joined Parity 2 years ago with what we call the Substrate Builders Program. That's our main development program that we have to help teams like run their projects and become parachains eventually. That program has the 60 different projects. When I say 60, it's some projects are already connected and some projects that will become parachains in the future. Also wallets and indexers, people building tools for things like ink smart contracts and all of that, right? But what we realized is that the Substrate Builders program does not fit everybody, right? It has some requirements that was leaving a lot of people out. So we started this new initiative like 2 months ago, more or less, called Square One, that we try for it to be sort of like a lighthouse in our ecosystem, right? Where anybody can try and see all the different tools that we have, all the different initiatives that we have across Parity and Web3 Foundation, and we try to understand what their status is, what their current development roadmap is, what is that they're looking for, and we try to match that with the initiatives that we have, right? So we started that fairly soon, and it's open to everybody, not only developers.
Are these programs like to bring these projects in? Do you have incentives, like financial incentives, supportive incentives? Like what is it that you guys are doing to really support these projects?
It depends on what the project needs, right? So maybe a project needs funding because they've got an idea, or I'm thinking about a project they were about to launch on Luna, actually, right? An Argentinian project, even though we're here.
No way.
And they all of a sudden realized that they had nowhere to go, right?
Yeah.
And Cosmos is very similar to Ink. So they just pivoted to Ink, and we helped them with a Web3 Foundation grant. They actually applied and went through the process to actually deliver that Ink product that will then deploy it on our ecosystem somewhere, right?
Cool.
So it can be financial incentives if the teams need it, right? Which are not huge. Again, the Web3 Foundation is extremely responsible in the way that they deal with money in general, right? This money is to help people build and not, again, to just get the money and run away.
Yeah.
But it could be other things, right? Maybe there's somebody that has an idea, right, and does not have a team. So why don't we help them connect with a hackathon near where they live so they can pitch that idea to some developers that are on the hackathon as well so they can build it together. So again, it depends a lot on what they're looking for and what we can offer.
Yeah. Well, I see a lot of Web3 businesses kind of have a lack of almost marketing and kind of putting themselves out there in a public eye and creating a really strong branding around their chain and stuff. What is Parity doing to kind of put Polkadot and some of the products that you guys have out there and getting it more well known and adopting mainstream adoption?
So with Polkadot itself, with the Polkadot brand, the entire marketing team is doing a bunch of efforts, right? Polkadot Decoded being in 4 different cities in the world. Plus, I don't know if you follow the treasury there, but there's a bunch of Pimp parties as well all around the world, right? So all of those things, the marketing team is sort of like coordinating them and trying to help the brand be out there, again, in a very responsible manner, right? Polkadot is sort of like this beast that's been slowly but steadily going forward. And the same principle applies to our marketing strategies. One could be aligned with that or not. It depends, right? And there's room for everybody's opinion here. But it's sort of like the strategy that's been going on, right? But when we help teams develop themselves, to be completely transparent here, we're not the best at chilling, let's say, these teams, right? Or helping them with marketing themselves. Because we know Substrate, we know how to build these things. And that's where we are the strongest. Of course, we try always to just do maybe just joint announcements or try to tell the community. If you go to Parity's blog post, there's a bunch of announcements of different milestones reviews that we do for teams and what milestones they achieved on their products and whatnot. But still like a little part, right? And there's a lot more to do. But also, in my opinion, in the blockchain space in general, sort of like the community played always a very big role into making the projects well known, right? It's not necessarily the project itself or the company that's developing the software or whatever, but the community itself comes together and helps the brand go forward.
Say I'm a brand new dev or a brand new builder going through all of the ecosystems from Ethereum, Solana, Polkadot, everybody. What would be something that you would tell that person why Polkadot?
I would say 2 things, right? The first one is, if you're serious about your product, you want to be here in the long term. And in my opinion, Polkadot is a network that's going to be here in the next 10 to 15 years. I cannot say the same thing about other products out there, other blockchains out there. So if you're serious about what you're building, if you're not tinkering around, then Polkadot is the way to go. But in order for you to get there, we can also help you get there, right? So we got things like the Polkadot Blockchain Academy that's launching the first edition right now in July. The Polkadot Blockchain Academy is happening in July, 4 weeks, presence in Cambridge this time around, with teachers like Gav, like Sean, like Rob, like all the core developers, Gav himself, right? Teaching, okay, guys, this is blockchain, this is substrate. Let's build this together. As I said before, the ability to just connect you with different hackathons for you to just play around and develop this. Or even, I don't know, our documentation, I'd say it's pretty straightforward and well put together for you to learn and develop a project. But all in all, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, why should I build Polkadot? I'd say, because if you're real about this, Polkadot will last at least 10 to 15 years for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about Parity because, you know, people who are just like holding tokens and whatnot, we hear like, oh, we're waiting on Parity to do this, waiting on Parity to do this.
Yeah.
What can you tell us from the inside that Parity is really doing in the breadth of their operations?
Well, I could say that this is a very, very extremely personal opinion. But
Please.
I go very much against, I'm waiting for Parity to do this, right?
Oh, yes.
Parity is just another actor in this whole space.
100%.
And this is a decentralized network. Polkadot is a decentralized entity, and we're all here to build it. Of course, Parity has a big responsibility for sure, because we basically write the code behind Polkadot, but that should not necessarily be the case, right?
Yeah.
We're even open for people to write the code themselves. So the first thing that I would say to that is, well, let's not wait on Parity to do something. Let's all do it, right?
Yep.
But from the inside, I do see a lot of activity going on, right? Especially on the development front. I'm sort of like in this in between on the BD space, right? Trying to help the teams develop the project. So I do talk a lot with our dev teams as well. And the activity there is quite high from every single actor in the ecosystem. You could have Gav asking things on a Saturday morning to all the other devs, like, hey, this is a new PR. Can somebody review it so we can merge it or whatnot? And it's Gav on a Saturday morning, right?
Yeah.
And that's quite intense. And on the same side, on the BD side that I can vouch for, we try to do a lot into getting more and more builders into our ecosystem. But not only stay there, but when they are in here, just help them make sure that they actually build.
I want to bring up something else here. I think a pain point that a lot of people don't realize is happening right now in the ecosystem is kind of a lack of knowledgeable auditors.
Yeah.
Right? You know, we have all these teams building amazing code, but then we only have a few firms that are actually able to verify that that code is not going to wreck everybody. How are we dealing with this issue right now? And is this something that Parity's taking on, or are there other initiatives that you know of?
Yeah, so there's a security team at Parity that sort of like overlooks these things going on, but it's sort of like training these auditors is not easy either, right?
No.
The firms that are out there, like Ezra Labs, Trail of Bits, Quackslab, there's a bunch of them, right? What we try to do sometimes is we run some experiments with them, see how they do, and try to see what we can work with together. But all in all, more people are needed in the end, right?
Yeah.
But it does not happen only to substrate code. If you go to Ethereum Solidity, same thing happens, right? Try to book some time with Open Zeppelin. They will tell you, okay, I've got time 8 months from now, at the very least.
Crazy.
It's sort of like all around, right? Audits are extremely important, but there are not that many auditors across the board.
Well, maybe that's where the Kusama chain comes in. Maybe we can just...
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Not only Kusama, but Rococo as well.
Right, yes.
Self-auditing, managed, like you're just doing stuff till it breaks and keep fixing it.
That's
Exactly.
right.
But Gav said it yesterday, right? Governance fee too. He said like, okay, we're waiting for this to be properly audited and whatnot, and that's Parity being audited, right? And he said, but well, we'll probably just deploy this on Kusama first, right? And see how it goes.
Yeah.
And that's what Kusama is for, right? Expect chaos at its best.
Yeah, exactly. We asked Gap about that yesterday. Like, if we're breaking stuff fast enough, and I think he kind of gave the impression that no, not really. Personally, I expected to have a decent chunk of my net worth hinging on a referendum by now.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, right?
But the thing is that Kusama got to a point last year where that was not the overall sentiment of the community, right? It got very serious very fast.
I know, yeah, exactly.
But fortunately, I believe that sentiment went away a little bit.
Dissolving a bit, yeah.
Yeah, there was a moment with the first 5 parachains, I think it was, that
they were like official.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Kusama, right?
Yeah, I know.
It's like that's not what Kusama's for, right?
Yeah, right. Very cool.
Do you collect NFTs at all?
No, not that much.
No?
No. But I'm a true believer on the sort of like why NFTs exist.
Yeah.
I'm not a big collectible of things in general, right? But I do believe that NFTs as as a tool in the future will be very important.
What are some of the things that you're looking forward to the most in Web3 space in general?
One thing that I was point out as something that I would love on Polkadot as well is a nice, truly decentralized file storage solution, right?
File storage?
Yeah. If you look at Web 2, everything that we do, or a lot of things that we do, we need to save things around. We need to share things around. When you're sharing something, it's sort of like saved somewhere in the middle, right?
Evan's interview. We're trying to get it shared right now.
You did say that yesterday? No.
No. The footage from it, we're trying to get it shared.
Struggling to get the data up.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Exactly, right? So especially for the Polkadot sort of like architecture, a file storage chain will make a huge difference, right? So you were talking about NFTs before, right? So think for a minute, a Polkadot blockchain with only 3 parachains. A smart contracts parachain, a DeFi parachain, and a file storage parachain, right? So right there, you can have a very nice sort of like NFT marketplace happening using all these parachains all together. Because maybe you've got an NFT, right? And the smart contract says that you are the owner of the NFT. All the metadata lives on the file storage chain, and the actual JPEG and whatever lives on the file storage chain. But then I want to buy the NFT from you. I just have my coins on the DeFi chain, right? So when somebody has a UI that says, hey, Santiago's going to buy this NFT, I just click a button that says buy. But what's actually happening under the hood is that the smart contract triggers sort of like an action to the file storage chain that changes the ownership of your metadata from you to me. It triggers another action to the DeFi chain, triggering the transfer from my tokens to your account. And then it saves that information so like this thing happened, right? And that is a truly purpose of Polkadot altogether. All these chains sort of like working together to provide this service, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
And that could be amazing.
That's cool.
Some key infrastructure there.
Yeah. Sort of like microservices in a way.
Yeah. Where can people find you on socials and follow along and then also parodies? Yeah,
I mainly use Twitter. It's at Santi Balaguer. I don't know.
Can you spell that?
Yeah. Santi is quite straightforward. SANTI. And Balaguer is B as in ball. So BALAGUER. Right. So at Santi Balaguer. There you go. And then I do use a lot of this tool. I don't know if you've been around using Matrix. A lot of dev activity happens there.
Okay.
So yeah, my handle is just my name, Parity, somewhere there, right?
What
Twitter's best.
What rooms do you hang out in the most?
What you mean? On
Matrix?
Elements?
Yeah.
Well, I do just hang around a lot of the different governance rooms that we have.
Okay.
And then I've got, with all these teams that I work with, I've got rooms with all of them there, right?
Yeah, gotcha. Cool.
So I just like, I'm all over the place.
Sweet, man. Well, it was so awesome to have you on here and get your perspective, not only of Parity, but also where we are in Argentina here,
Nice.
and where the tech is going. And the tech's going to help.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you guys very much. I really enjoyed this.